Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar, All You Never Knew About Programmatic Job Advertising. Today, we will discuss how the world's smartest recruiting teams advertise their jobs. My name is Shazad. I'm the VP of Global Marketing for Jovio and your moderator for today. Our first speaker today is the amazing Jen Terry, our VP of Strategic Initiatives and former Head of Talent Acquisition, Recruitment Marketing, and Employment Branding at AT&T. Our second speaker is the awesome Jim Dwyer, our VP of Strategic Partnerships and guru of everything talent acquisition for enterprises, staffing businesses, and RPOs. I want to encourage you all to submit any questions you may have for us on the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar platform. We will have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A at the end of our presentation. If we're not able to get to everyone's questions, we will follow up with you individually after the webinar. So without further ado, Jen, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Shazad. And thank you to everybody for joining and those in the future that are listening to the recording. I wanted to start off today by really setting the stage around what's happening in talent acquisition. And unless you have some sort of great secret that I know nothing about, every talent acquisition professional that I have talked with in the last several months, they're under a lot of stress, right? And why that is because COVID-19 has negatively impacted our ability to hire to plan. I've heard stories about budget cuts, right? If your store isn't opening, you don't need to hire people to work in the store, so headcount reductions also, right? If you're not hiring as much, maybe you've had to furlough team members or even lay off some. Things like in-person interviews and events and college visits and campus things, all of those things aren't happening right now. And because of that, not only are we being challenged and stressed to maybe do more with less if we've had to lay off our furlough team members, but we might also be dealing with what do we do in this new space where our traditional face-to-face interactions, whether that's video interviewing or events, aren't really able to happen like they were in the past. So as I talk with professionals, it sort of all boils down to one thing: being able to do more with less. And I, I kind of went through my mind and thought and thought about everybody that I had conversations with, and it really centered down to these three things: lower cost, whether the budget has been cut because of COVID-19, or even if it's just been fixed, right? Like there's definitely no opportunity to try anything new. How do I either lower my costs, get more for less, or how do I find a way to try and do new things that will eventually really help my budget and my hiring outcomes without putting out any more money? Also, how do you get through the myriad of candidates that are applying for your jobs? If I looked back to just a year ago, I was looking in most places at a really tight market, right? Whether you were hiring entry level customer service or project managers, all the way up to data scientists and beyond, it didn't matter what the role, there was really a scarcity in talent. We were at somewhere around 3 to 5% unemployment rates in most cities, and you still had vacancies to fill. Now in some places you're looking at unemployment rates in the double digits, high teens, and those same candidates that you couldn't find a year ago now are looking for anything because they've been displaced. So really understanding, how do you get the right strategies so that you don't have too many not appropriately relevant candidates to go through to find that one good candidate? And then finally, it's about predictability, not just predictability in the talent that you're going to get and its alignment with the job that you're hiring for, but also being able to predict how quickly you'll be able to get those candidates in the funnel. What will it cost you? Does that vary by job or location or state? I mean, the reality is recruiters today are really, they're guessing with a little data at best, right? Like they're really just sort of looking out to the future. And so if I were to sum it up for the TA leaders in general and how things are working for them, and that's really you and me, right? It's that we continue to be tasked with finding high quality applicants quickly. We have shrinking or uncertain budgets. We may have less staff, and we certainly don't want to compromise candidate experience. But if not managed appropriately, we have much more candidates to manage the experience for. So, so that really puts us in a place where where we might have some opportunities to use some automation to do some different things. So that's sort of the perspective from the talent acquisition leader space. Now, if we flip to the job seeker experience, positions that are really face to face and depend on sort of the collective social gatherings, those positions are down, with waitresses being down 77%. So if you think about how much that impacts sort of our entry level employees, and then at the same time, you have these new jobs that we maybe saw once in a blue moon, like epidemiologists, medical reviewers, temperature takers, contact tracers, right? Jobs like that that we weren't even on our radar. I mean, not on my radar. They might have been on somebody on the call's radar, but to be real honest, those weren't even on my radar a year ago. I kind of knew they existed. So there's sort of this waning in the hospitality, this uptick in jobs that are really centered around supporting the COVID-19 crisis. And then there's this new thing that I think is really interesting for all of us as TA professionals, and that is the ballooning of the search term remote. Now that we are getting less mired to a particular office, it does a couple of things. One, it's changing the way job seekers are looking for jobs, right? If I was used to having to commute 30 minutes to an office because that was, the best job for my profession where I lived in my geography, that was just a reality of my job search. But now, as companies are expanding and taking people out of the brick and mortar, there's really an opportunity for not only candidates to globalize their search by looking for things like remote, but also as employers, there's an opportunity for us to maybe globalize our workforce and gain talent that we otherwise didn't have access to when we expected them to come to a brick and mortar location. So all of that to say that the job seeker landscape, how they're searching and how we might look at it, that's all shifting. Then you lay on top of it the recruitment ecosystem, right? Like I'm sure we all struggle, or I don't even want to say struggle, we all contend with the idea that there are a gazillion places where you have the opportunity to reach job seekers. It's complex and it's fragmented, and it goes everything from networking sites to social media to referrals to the old duration-based job boards to paying per click. There's a lot out there, and if you were to try to do that on your own and in the most, it would just be a lot, right? I think back to my days at AT&T, and the idea of trying to contract with 100 different job distributors, that would, my procurement team would have told me no, right? Like they would have just said, no, you can't do that. And so by default, I may have had to, without another option, I may have had to limit myself to only the ones that bring the most volume because they would do the most good, even if they weren't the most economical or didn't have the highest quality, but they were the simplest to implement. So what we're going to talk about today is how the world's smartest recruiters, and I'd like to think that people on this call are right in that group also, right? How do you all and how do we advertise our jobs and make the best of all of the things that we just talked about? And the reality is, programmatic advertising is a giant game changer. And if you're on the call today, and I see lots of friends on the call, thank you guys so much for joining. If you're on the call today, you're probably at least moderately inquisitive or familiar with the concept of programmatic job advertising. So what does it really mean? It really is the machine-driven, rules-based approach to buying advertising. And in this case, particularly for jobs. It ensures that you have the most relative and effective. I like to look at it sort of like a reverse auction or like, you know how if you're only looking at your local store, the ability to find the perfect thing isn't as easy as if you go to the World Wide Web and you type in what you're looking for, right? You can get much more specific the more you have the machine looking and crawling for what you're looking for. And then once you return all of those things, chances that the competition on price in this big ecosystem is better than like Joe's dollar store down the street is very high, right? Because you have the pressure of multiple inputs driving your costs down. So what does that mean? A selection of hundreds of publishers, right? So not just the 3 that your procurement team wants to secure because that's where the most come from, but really all that might be helpful and efficient and provide high quality so that when you're posting your job, you can really match that job to the outlet that is going to provide the best return on investment. The second thing that you get with a programmatic solution is timing, like knowing what works best. Like when should your job be posted, distributed? Also, being able to set your budgets. How much do you want to spend? The reality is, if you would have asked me in my old role, the amount that I'm willing to spend on like a retail store worker or a tier 1 customer service rep is probably substantially less than I was willing to spend on a data scientist or an actuary. So understanding that you can really control that and make sure that you're putting your dollars in the right place. And then finally, what gets back to sort of that how do we have a great candidate and recruiter experience and do more with less staff? Programmatic advertising allows you to put caps on how many candidates come into that funnel so you don't overspend or underspend, and you don't end up with thousands of candidates for your recruiters to go through if your intended outcome was to only have 4 or 5. And as you think about, what makes a solution truly programmatic, so that's sort of the big framework, right? Every programmatic vendor should do those things for you. I am going to turn it over to my friend Jim Dwyer, and he is going to walk through some very specific details in sort of how that overview I just talked about, how that works in practice. Jim, can you go ahead and take it away?
Hey, I'd be happy to. And thank you, Jen, very much. And thank all of you participants on the call today. It's a pleasure to be with you. And Jen, thanks for the flawless overview of the talent acquisition landscape as it exists today, and then the overview of programmatic platforms. And you're absolutely right. There are indeed specific requirements for a solution to be truly programmatic. I generally throw everything that programmatic should do into basically 3 buckets. Number 1 is intelligence, number 2 is activation, and number 3 is insights. And then it's rinse and repeat. And I say that because the more times the data goes through the cycle, the better the data becomes. So I look at these 3 programmatic buckets as 3 legs of a stool. Each one is of equal importance, and you need all 3 to be successful. So let's take a look at the first one, which is intelligence. So intelligence is really putting your own data to work for you. And as we all know in the talent acquisition space, today recruitment teams typically sit on a mountain of data which is left unused. And this is a massive opportunity for you to build a competitive advantage if you leverage it properly. So in this instance, intelligence equals data. And we begin with seed data. And seed data is comprised of source, apply, and hire data. And folded in along with it is jobs data and incumbent data. Then any programmatic platform worth its salt should overlay seed data with budget and goal data. And those goals could be the number of qualified applicants, the time to hire, the cost to apply. But if you think it a little bit further down the road, why not at this point expand or bump up your success metrics? Take them to the next level. This simply gives you better targets with more knowledge and bigger gains. And by doing that, you would be taking them to, say, the number of hires or the cost per hire or the hire per source. Your programmatic platform should have these capabilities for you. You don't want to merely solve for today's challenges, but most importantly for tomorrow's as well. So as we look at the second leg of the stool, which is activation, this is really where you leverage the machine learning based recommendations. So activation really functions as the trigger where artificial intelligence and machine learning take the lead in making the data available. So it's really enhancing your success metrics. Beginning with a target audience or a lookalike audience, you want to make certain you have all the audiences have automated and optimized distribution. You want to make sure that you're able to buy, manage, and track, whether paid or free, recruitment media across all digital channels. And in this case, your mantra should be your goal, and it should be buy what you need when you need it. Through these key programmatic requirements, you should be able to automate and optimize job distribution across all of your KPIs, as well as buy media from only the most effective sources for the appropriate amount of time. Last but not least, the third leg of this stool are insights. Insights are really the data outcomes which drive the success metrics you desire. So, whether you're working with pay-per-click job boards or pay-per-click search, display, or social, even duration-based postings or organic options are taken into view as well, or slot-based job boards. Regardless of where you are published, your programmatic platform should be able to distill the results to where you are actually comparing apples to apples. And what I love about this, defining the three legs, underlying and running through this constantly is learned intelligence. And why that is because we're constantly advancing the data through learned intelligence. So the value continues exponentially over time as the insights and the learnings are automatically applied to create new intelligence for continuous improvement and better results through every step of the process. The machine learning based recommendation engine actually highlights which channels have the best higher probability. So good platforms continuously optimize based on your data. So what does that mean? Something that Jen intimated along the way. Intuition-based decisions are out the window, and everything is driven by data-based decisions. So fundamentally, programmatic recruitment is the next step in successful talent acquisition, bridging a gap between performance and traditional recruitment. And really, at this point, I'd like to pass the baton back to Jen, who will give you a striking overview of the benefits of programmatic job advertising.
Thank you, Jim. And I think that this is like a nice way to sort of close the loop on some of the things that we talked about earlier when we were setting up the climate. And when we talk about the benefits of programmatic advertising, some of them are pretty obvious, right? Lower cost per hire and better spend control. If you have the ability to allocate budgets at both the macro, like a job group or a state or even a country, right? Like you can allocate budgets at that level, but also if you really have some very specific geographic based needs or for a particular type of job, you can actually allocate budgets down to the individual job level. One of the things that I found very I'm going to say frustrating because I can't think of a stronger appropriate word. But as I was looking across my whole continuum of all of my advertising, whether it was job slots that I was buying on a niche site or, my Monster or Career Builder or whatever those slots or duration-based posts that I was purchasing, then I was doing some things on Google, and then I had my Programmatic, right? Before Jovio, there wasn't really a way to be able to see all of that activity in a single dashboard without paying for complicated and sophisticated reporting. And so by design, Jovio allows you to take all of those different types of advertising, Google, Facebook, your slot and duration based boards, your pay-per-click, all of that, and put it into one dashboard so you can really compare apples to apples and understand not only what individual outlet is performing better, but even get insights on, is it working better on a mobile device or on a desktop? Is it working better using my programmatic ad buying or my postings, so that you can really take all of the vendors out of that equation and all of the work that it takes to consolidate all of that performing to get a clear look across. And that way you can make sure that not just theoretically you're meeting your cost goals with the best sources, but you can literally make sure that every piece of your media strategy is aligned to your KPIs. The next thing is really getting back into that whole, we don't want too many or not enough candidates. So making sure that you get relevant candidates qualified for your jobs. And as Jem talked about in the intelligence cycle, that learning cycle happens in a lot of ways. It happens as you run more and more advertising, but it also happens in the beginning. If you can give us some profiles of successful people in these jobs, we can use those facets to make sure that your searches start out more intelligent. The other thing is that as you hire and do more and more, and you adjust, we adjust bids and do all of those things that make your costs go down and all of those things, when all of those inputs come in, the machine learns from that and optimizes your results and your profiles so that you can get the best reach at the best time and the best geography. You get the best audience and therefore need less candidates to actually convert. Then, and I have probably talked with 50 talent acquisition professionals since COVID-19 started. And one of the things that seemed to be a prevailing just challenge is that in light of the economy and lack of hiring and some of those things, talent acquisition leaders have had to furlough or let go employees, and the ones that are left seem to be on the precipice of like imploding, because the last thing a hiring manager wants to hear after we've been on a downturn when they start hiring again is that you don't have enough people to get the job done, or that it's going to take too long, right? Like, they're like, what have you been doing all this time? And even though the reality is you've been incredibly busy, you're going to have to find a way to have significantly more productive recruiters. So instead of having recruiters that may have to go to multiple sites to sponsor jobs or make several contacts with vendors, that'll have to get data months in arrears on how things are performing in order to make pivots, the reality is you can save time and resources with this sort of automation. All of your media, whether it's slot-based, duration-based, pay-per-click, Google, all running through one platform, and everything being able to be sponsored if it needs sponsorship and it isn't like a duration-based post, everything there at just a click, along with their real-time results. That way, not only can your recruiter make changes much more efficiently, but you also have the opportunity to automate some of those things, right? So if you know that this job takes 10 people, like, you can have it turn off the budget at 10 people so that your recruiter doesn't have to keep watching it, right? Things that are really smart automations and even expansions of jobs so that you may not have to source as much for it directly are all things that can be done with much fewer staff inside the dashboard itself. And I love this piece, and if you are my connection, you have likely heard me speak on the topic of candidate experience more than once. And if you have, you will know that the thing that I say most common is that besides sending candidates to a black hole where they never hear back, which I understand sometimes happens and we would all like to avoid, the next worst thing you can do is oversource, because for every job that you say yes to 1 out of 100, you say no to 99 other, right? So you would be far better off, particularly if you're a consumer brand, to not bring in those 99 no candidates. So knowing that is really like controlling your volume, number one thing there. Secondarily, we can help you simplify your job application with or without changing something necessarily in your applicant tracking system. We also can optimize your apply and search for jobs so that it is available on both a mobile device and a desktop. If this isn't something that you're currently taking advantage of, it's definitely something that you should pursue. The latest data shows that more than 50% of job applicants make their first job search on a mobile device. Right, think about half of our applicant pool is really looking to engage with us from a mobile device. And even on top of that, I would add that if you are a company that is focused on diversity and in bringing in all types of candidates, mobile devices have a much higher adoption rate than traditional internet, particularly with minorities and people of color. And then last but certainly not least, on the exceptional candidate experiences, I always feel like my mom or my grandma when I make this reference, but I won't stop anyway. And that is the whole concept of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And the reality is, if you have already taken all of the, if you have a candidate who has taken the time to actually start applying for a job with your company, they have gone through a decision process and you have convinced them through your content and your job description and all of those other things. They've decided that they want to apply there and they've started. If they stop their application because they got distracted or maybe they needed something and didn't come back, the ability to send targeted messages to those candidates to re-engage them and finish their application process can do wonders to the amount of started applications that finish in completed applications. I like to call those the stalker ads, and mine are almost always for furniture or lamps, right? Like, it doesn't matter where I go on the internet, the lamp ad is following me everywhere. So we can do that too with your actual jobs. Come back and finish your application, things along those lines. All things that help make it an exceptional candidate experience and make them feel like they're important, right? Like, we realize you didn't finish your application. And so moving past the candidate experience and really looking into how do I look at this overall, when push comes to shove, all of those other things are great and they do lots to grease the wheels for really refined input of candidates and the experience and all of those things. But where you really make decisions is in the data and understanding the real-time tracking of performance and cost. And I'm sure if you are on this call and you have been in talent acquisition for any measure of months or years, you know that the ability to see how all of your media is performing almost in real time is next to impossible. I can remember a time, and I'm probably dating my talent acquisition experience here, but I can remember a time when I felt really lucky to have good data once a quarter. Then it moved to once a month, and now that's sort of where it stayed if you're looking at it kind of trying to collate all of the different sources. And I go back to this example because I feel like several of us maybe have been there or are still sitting there. And that is, imagine that you have a couple of slaughter duration based publishers, you have some pay-per-click, you got some Glassdoor, you've got a few Google. Imagine waiting. So you have to wait until the month ends to get the reporting on what happened with your jobs. Then you have to have somebody on your team take all of that information, collate it into some sort of common format, and redistribute it out so that you can look at it. By the time you're seeing how well job number 1, 2, 3, 4 in Boise, Idaho performed, job number 1, 2, 3, 4 in Boise, Idaho better already be closed, right? Like, otherwise we're in trouble here. And so what it does is it takes the decision making from being theoretical about how we will handle things, and it takes it to how did we handle this thing? Do we need to raise the budget? Did we do we have enough candidates? Do we even need to advertise? There's some jobs that you might post, you might get enough organic results, you don't even need to sponsor anything. So really understanding and tracking the performance and costs for all of the media by campaign, down to the individual job level, and even by publishers, right? You might think today that Joe's job board is your best job board for nurses. The reality is when you get it in the system, Joe's job board really is just like, it's just getting traffic from somewhere else, and you really could get that same traffic at a lower cost from somewhere else. So giving you transparency, very important. And then knowing, and earlier I said, you might not even need to sponsor jobs. This was the biggest aha moment for me as an employer. Understanding that I didn't have to sponsor jobs. Some jobs, for example, my customer service job in Memphis, Tennessee in the US, it was getting 4 times as much traffic as I needed without me ever spending a penny. But because every other customer service job needed traffic, I had it on a campaign that was sending traffic to all the customer service jobs. So really being able to sort of double click down and understand what organic providers are providing you and what jobs you're receiving enough native traffic for, and those that you might just need a little tune up. You might not need the most expensive job posting or the most expensive pay-per-click or paper app campaign. You might just need a slight boost, and having the ability to tell that real time instead of in retrospect with the intention of applying it to future jobs is really a game changer in how much money you spend on what things, right? If you only have a finite budget, you'd rather spend it on the most important things, not on things that don't need it. And I will just close before I turn it over to Jim to take us through some actual case studies. This isn't just about a single location or a single country. I'm looking through the list of attendees, and I actually know several of you, and I know that you manage multinationals. And one of the things that we often lament about is our inability to serve all of the masters, right? Likely several of us report up to a single country, whether you're in London or you're in the US or wherever. The hierarchy goes upwards. And so whatever that predominant currency is, that's where we tend to sort of live our truth. But the reality is, if I'm in the US and I am hiring a ton of people in Bratislava, I might need to show money. I might need to show currency in something that's more relevant to them than US dollars. I might also need to work with publishers in those countries that bill in those dollars. And today, in order to do that, that's a very complicated procurement effort, or it requires intervention from more than one third party typically. And so just understanding that there is a capability with Jovio's programmatic platform to not only get a wide reach through several publishers and relationships that we have, but also to really make sure that the business rules associated with your countries can really provide what you need to manage your business and to provide the appropriate overviews, whether that's at a country or a business unit level. So great features, and glad to answer questions at the end of the call or set up time afterwards. But I think especially those of you that manage multinationals, this is a real benefit both in billing and in reporting and consolidation. And so with that, I think that nothing is ever as well understood as to see it in black and white from a real customer's perspective, and how did we do it, and how did they save money or get more candidates. So with that, Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some success stories.
Well, excellent. And thank you for defining the nuances of programmatic as a platform and the offerings provided. So we have several success cases that we'd like to review relatively quickly with you, because of course we wouldn't tell you anything bad. So first and foremost, one which was really enlightening was there isn't anyone on this call that doesn't understand that there is a huge need, and has been for quite some time, for truckers. And it's caused paramount challenges for everything from logistics to just getting home from work every single day. So in this particular scenario, the problem was that a national carrier with 3 terminals was struggling to hire reefers, flatbed, and hazmat drivers. So in addition to that, and probably more importantly, the terminals were experiencing over an average 20% vacancy rate, which is huge. And then the hiring was growing increasingly difficult. Now, that pretty much goes without saying. The solution that was created through Programmatic was that there was an implementation of ads targeting active and dormant job seekers within 50 miles of each terminal. So basically, we had geo-targeting in place, allowing us to make sure that we were capturing everybody. And active and dormant, so retargeting people who had actually been in the mix previously. Then part of the solution was identified the best job titles using intelligent and automated A/B testing. So another feature of job expansion, going out there and changing the titles, doing A/B testing, finding out which job titles really accrued the best candidates and continuing to work with those job titles. And then likewise, increased leads and decreased cost with automated cost optimizations. So something that was recurring throughout the entire campaign, allowing those publishers to be able to be right on point when it came to cost. The overarching results were a 17% reduction in the cost per hire, but most importantly, 20% reduction in the vacancy in the first 6 months. What does that mean? That means that you're getting far more revenue generated by getting vacant trucks back on the road to the point where they were increasing their monthly revenues by over $200,000. The second success case we'd like to bring into view is one that involves a global staffing agency. And the problem is endemic to any large staffing agency or even enterprise organization. The problem was creating a centralized platform for a globally distributed team of recruitment marketers. So how do you have all of these disparate people coming into one place, understanding the nuances of the platform they were using? In addition to that was how they could validate the value claimed by the programmatic job advertising technology. And that can be a challenge if you're not using the right platform. The solution that was created was job segmentation by cost center, need priority, and broad categories. So what does that do? That really brings that home into being able to directly understand where those costs were being incurred and what was being successful. And then added to that solution was network optimization to raise or lower the bids based off the CPA and the apply volume. So once again, in constant motion, in perpetual motion, always monitoring exactly what was going on within the programmatic platform to enhance the results at all levels. Instantly, there was a 40% decrease in the CPA and a 27% savings overall, which is huge. The one thing I would stress more than anything else in this day and age, programmatic platforms have innumerable use cases. They have as many use cases as you have success metrics. And we can design those programmatic nuances to be able to fulfill the success metrics that you want. So we derive the point where we've painted a picture of what the talent acquisition landscape looks like. And then we've looked into what the components of a truly programmatic platform should possess, and then getting into the nuances of those as well. So in order to make sure that you go out and vet the correct platform at any particular time, what do you need to understand that platform's capabilities have to best serve your needs, not just today, but in perpetuity, because this just isn't about today, it's about tomorrow as well. So we want to ask questions. We already know, as was defined, that the TA landscape or ecosystem is a mosh pit of disconnection. So we need to really ask deep questions about the requisite information that we need. So let's start with, what online recruitment marketing channels do you support? So you want to ask them, can you buy and manage media across all your required job boards, meaning the ones that you have the best results from? Can you advertise your jobs and retarget candidates on Google, social channels, and the whole World Wide Web using the same platform. And you also want to know, can you manage your existing slots and duration-based postings from the same platform? So that's looking merely at one component, which is online marketing channels. So what if we look at segmentation and automation, which are truly intrinsic to the success of any campaign? You want to know, can you allot budgets and goals at the campaign, job group, and job levels? Likewise, can you optimize and set up automation rules and expansions down to the job level, just like they did with the truck drivers? And then third, can you view insights by campaign, job group, and job? Once again, giving you more definitive understanding on where exactly that success begins and rolls. So then that takes us from segmentation and automation to what about data and analytics? What do I need to know about that? So you need to know, can I track all the required metrics from click to hire in one platform? Can you track metrics across your online channels, whether they're job boards, whether they're search engines, organic, social, all in one platform? Now, if that's not important enough, data and analytics, to highlight Jen's favorite place is job application experience or job user experience. So it gets back to the same old mantra. Does your job application experience enhance the applies and the click to apply conversions? Can you optimize the applications for all devices? Because as we know, where everybody starts their application process. And can you retarget, re-engage relevant job seekers that did not complete the application? Because let's face it, you've already spent your dollar attracting that person. They understand your brand, and this is just getting the pool skimmer out and finishing the job. So those are the things that you want to focus on. And if you obviously would like a list of any of those, we're more than happy to provide that to you. I'd like to close by just saying a little bit about who we are and what we do. As you probably know, our company name is Jovio. I happen to believe it's a new age acronym for a job for everyone. And that expression has been fibered into the being, not just of our CEO and our leadership, but everyone in the organization. It has never been more important than it is today to fulfill that dream of finding everyone a job. And it really is no longer a choice, but it's our duty. And it's our duty as an industry, as a company, and as individuals to work together to come up with practical and pragmatic solutions to get the world back to work. This is not just about deploying people, it's about saving lives and families. There's an old axiom, and it goes, we know the right job will transform a person's life. And we also know that the right person will transform an organization. And we just want to make sure that that organization is yours. So what I'd like to do is close by giving you a bird's eye view of what the Jovio platform looks like. So without question, Jovio has the most advanced global programmatic advertising platform in the market today. So what you're viewing right now is actually the client dashboard. It's Jovio's benchmark. It's Jovio's safeguard for success. As we discussed earlier, the three most important ingredients in programmatic are transparency, real time, and single source of truth. They are all contained right here in the client dashboard at your fingertips, at your beck and call, and when demand needs. So whether you're looking at CTA, CPA, CHA, or track to hire, it's all in there. And it's an amazing opportunity to have everything in one source of truth. The other thing that we want to delight you with is the fact that not only can we provide this in one place, but Jovio also can help you quickly fill your candidate pipeline with up to 2 times more of the qualified applicants than any other source that you've used previously. And we can do that while reducing the cost per hire and the cost per apply by 20 to 50%. We can also help your recruiters become wildly more productive. And these aren't just words, these are feedbacks from our clients who have seen results from their recruiters in half the time. Not only that, we can deliver exceptional, delighted candidate experience, resulting in up to a 40% higher click to apply rate. And Last but not least, for talent acquisition leaders and recruitment marketers looking to innovate and experiment with artificial intelligence at a low risk, even before candidates apply, without asking for more budget, programmatic job advertising with Jovio is truly a fantastic place to start. So we're working with hundreds of the world's top recruiters and recruitment marketers, whether they're from large or small staffing agencies, RPOs, recruitment, advertising agencies, direct employers or gig economy companies, or job boards. The success has been overwhelming and it's been pervasive. We have built a platform that allows this to transition irrespective of the line or type of work that you do or the type of candidate or industry in which you evolve. We would love to provide each and every one of you a demo of our award-winning platform. And to do this, all you have to do is go to jovio.com/demo and fill out a form, or reach out to sales@jovio.com and we'll respond as soon as humanly possible. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your time, your interest, and hopefully this has been educational. And I generally would never speak for Jen T, but I know that both she and I really, really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Jen. That was amazing. What I would love to do is invite you all again to submit your questions using the Q&A section in the webinar platform. We do have a couple of questions so far. The first question really is, can I use programmatic job advertising when I already have ongoing contracts with publishers?
Ah, great question, right? So what I would say to you is, quite honestly, it's one of the best times, right? Because before you purchase again, you really want to know what's working best. So certainly if you already have agreements with, say, a slot-based or a duration-based publisher, we can absolutely get you started and allow you to see the results of those so that you can, quite frankly, use those in the renegotiation process.
Thank you, Jen. The second question I have here is, I don't have anyone on my team, like a recruitment marketer, who can manage programmatic day to day. Do platforms or does Jovio offer this as a managed service?
Well, another great question. And, you know, it's kicking all the tires. We at Jovio have a managed service team or premier support team, and that's specifically what they're designed for. And in essence, we see that utilization more so in small to medium companies than we do in large companies that generally have that type of staff that are able to support that. The beauty of it is whether you elect to go out on your own and do it, or whether it's a managed service, you will know as much about the platform by the time it's launched as anybody who would digitally operate that platform. So the answer is yes, we can take care of that for you, and it's seamless for all of us. And the education process is certainly something in which you'll delight, because you'll understand every nuance of the successes that you achieve.
Thank you, Jim. We have one more question. Can you give us an example of how you simplify the job application?
This is one of my favorites, right? Because, right, as a TA professional, a lot of times your applicant tracking system is incredibly hard to reconfigure. And so we actually have a process in which we can take your current application and almost replicate it and switch around the order, make things that are required not required until later. We can do a lot of customization, but one of the most successful examples that I have seen is where we literally took and just did one small thing, and that was that we made the application a little bit shorter and did it in 2 phases, made it mobile optimized, and that was all that it took. It increased conversion rates substantially. So another idea is, depending on where you're at, you know, you may require less, you can require less upfront information and maybe just a resume or a CV as opposed to all the other information, and maybe get that further down the road if you need it. It makes a huge difference in how well things convert.
And today, in this day and age, it makes a complete difference on what your deliverable looks like too.
I want to just jump on because I can see the Q&A and just read Taylor's question because I think it's a perfect follow-up right here. Are you able to integrate downstream metrics like what kind of phone screens and interviews into the platform to determine the cost per quality applicant? We haven't had anybody ask that deep, but yes, it is absolutely possible. And what we do have sort of standard on the dashboard that Jim showed you is the ability to go through to hire. But if you would like the iterative steps between there, we certainly can help you with that. It just wouldn't be exactly like 100% off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And very good metrics to have, right? Especially if you want to see where your bottlenecks or opportunities are. And also the speed in which candidates from what sources move through those stages is also very eye-opening.
Thank you, Jen. There's one more question. If I need to pitch Programmatic to our executive team, how should I position the business impact?
Okay, so at one point in time, I was sitting in a chair where I had to do that, right? and so I don't know if this is the right answer for everyone, and we certainly can help you, put together the business impacts and sort of a good one-pager for your executive team when you're going to stakeholder. But for me, it was really about the idea of not paying for things that I don't need. The ability to be really, really nimble. And like this shows a great example. If you were really invested in a programmatic provider and not long-term contracts, you would have likely not been in as big of trouble as many of my friends are, right? And the other thing that I would say is that there are often ways, particularly depending on how much media you run and where you're working it at, that just the transparency into the results and the ability of the system to learn and optimize can show significant cost savings in negotiations on and bid placements in a very short period of time. So there's both the cost savings from the side of spending, there's the flexibility of not having to pre-purchase all of your media, and then there's also the benefit of real-time information that you can act on and course correct versus waiting as much as 30, 45 days, or in some cases even a quarter down the line to get learnings from your data.
Would it be okay if I add one more thing, Jen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I believe today, with the solutions that are in play, there truly is no competitive advantage because everybody's utilizing the same things. And with a programmatic platform, the competitive advantage opens up exponentially. And it does that because, as we touched on earlier, no two people use the same success criteria. And we'd love to see success criteria climb up to higher levels. It gives you the capability of being able to go to places where you may not have been before and garner the results from those publishers as well. So it really opens up and gives you a better reach because you're only going to be associated with those publishers that are returning the best results. And those might not be in your hand today.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Jim. We did have a couple of questions related to pricing. We will reach out to you individually, for scheduling a demo as well as providing a little bit more details on pricing after the webinar. Awesome. I think those were all of our questions for now. Thank you all so much for being such a fantastic audience. Thank you also, Jim and Jen, for sharing your unique perspectives on programmatic job advertising. Everyone, please take care, stay healthy, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, Shazad. Thanks to you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.